But the verite of it all, which I live for, he's obviously a great character. He's eccentric and all that sort of built in. But I love the rough and readiness of him. He goes to do his podcast and that gift where he doesn't know how to use the headphones, and Al Hunt can't use the Zoom or the podcast thing. And I mean, just like, that for me was great. And I wanted his spilling his pills and things like that. I just didn't want to have perfection here. I wanted to have the rough-hewn James.
Hello, and welcome back to The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America. In this episode, famed political strategist James Carville is back for election season in director Matt Tyrnauer's documentary, Carville, Winning is Everything Stupid. Screened as part of the DGA's documentary series, the film follows the Democratic consultant's career from his rise to fame in 1992 to his current effort with Kamala Harris's campaign. As he navigates America's tumultuous 2024 election cycle, Carville is portrayed not only in his political element, but also in his personal life. In addition to Carville, Winning is Everything Stupid, Tyrnauer's other directorial credits include the documentary features Valentino, The Last Emperor, Studio 54, and Where's My Roy Cohn, as well as the documentary miniseries The Reagans and Victoria's Secret, Angels and Demons. Following the documentary series screening of the film at the DGA Theater in Los Angeles, Tyrnauer spoke with director Ondi Timoner about filming Carville, Winning is Everything Stupid. Listen on for their conversation.
Another round of applause for Matt Tyrnauer.
Thank you.
I thought it would be good to put a political film at this time of year, given our situation, but I had no idea of the turn of events that would happen, even at the end of your film, and even since then. Tell us about how Telluride went and how James feels about the film, and also Kamala.
Well, James hadn't seen the film until Telluride, which I appreciated. I don't know. I mean, actually, that's happened to me one other time, but it's always the dream, of course. So he went to Telluride. I sat one away from him while he watched it. He was convulsively sobbing during the film in a good way. And then I think he was in shock after. I mean, it really is a big deal to have your life flash before you like this. And it's rare to sit with the person with an audience when they see it for the first time, but Mary was there as well, and they were in the best sense of the word, in shock, I think, as we drove back to the hotel afterwards. So the reaction for him has been great, and he is going to be promoting it, and it airs on. We have like a weird ass backwards structure for the premiere because it has to come out, in my opinion, in the pre-election months, and he'll promote a October 5th CNN premiere, and then we'll do theatrical after that. And I'm kind of into that because I like breaking the paradigm, and I do want to do a theatrical film. And I think this is what do we have, like 56 days to the election? I think it will be a great sort of political, but not on the nose experience in the political season for viewers.
So a little background on Matt. For those of you who don't know his work, and also a lead into a question. Roy Cohn, Valentino, 4-part series on Reagan, Nobu. Tell me about how you choose your subjects and how Carville came to be a subject. And I know you've been a journalist, so
sure.
Is that, yeah.
Well, the Reagans was Ronald and Nancy Reagan, actually, which is, I think, is important. And then you left out the one about the pimp, Scotty Bowers, who ran the brothel out of the gas station down the road.
What do they all have in common, Matt?
I've often asked that question. It's a as a former journalist, that's a great old journalistic saw of a question, and it's a legitimate question. I never had a good answer for it until I did a podcast once with a guy I think is really smart, Sean Fennessy, and he has this Ringer podcast about film. He's a wonderful film aesthete, and he asked me that question, and I was struggling with the answer, and he said, "I know the answer. They're all hustlers." And I thought, "You're right."
Selling is everything.
Selling, yeah.
If
So
you can't sell, you can't win. What's the line? Carville's line?
If you're not willing to sell, you're not willing to win. We're not huckster enough. My mother I'm the son of a great salesperson, his mother. So when we started on this journey, James and I, we did not know each other. We had a mutual friend, and that's how we got connected. I thought this was a good idea. It was well before the Biden troubles in terms of his ability to present as a candidate, which obviously the film is in part about. But we had a couple dinners, and he had two requests. I'm not into really taking requests from my subjects, but I certainly would listen to them. And I thought they were very legitimate. One was he wanted the film to inspire people to get into politics and a new generation. And I made him a pledge that I would do that in a not eat your spinach way, that I wouldn't preach to people about it, but I would have his spirit embodied in the film and expressed in a way that it could become infectious. And the second was he wanted the film to be about hucksters in part. And I didn't quite know what he meant, but he then started talking about how to call at the first dinner we had. And he's like, there was a guy named Dudley J. LeBlanc. He was a senator from Louisiana. I'd never heard of him, of course. And how to call, I'd never heard of that. And I went home and was sort of scrolling through YouTube that night. And I thought, I love this. I mean, the How to Call Boogie has its own song that I think paid the estate of Dudley LeBlanc $7,000 for to this day. And but that huckster idea, especially in the era of Trumpism, where there's asymmetrical warfare that defines the political scape these days, I think is a really important message. And I think James embodies it. And he's a great messenger for it. But I thought he was right that did need to be in the film. And that's one of those ideas that you think, oh, this is a weird side trip that'll never make it in the film. But I'm glad that it is in there and it occupies a good chunk.
I think what really, the film is about so much more than just turning 80 and looking at a man who's too old who's in office. I mean, it's also about love and marriage and having a marriage where there's two completely different entire ideologies under the same roof. And what did you learn from that? And how did you get Mary to come to the table in this film? Or was that a challenge? It's crucial.
Yeah, it's absolutely crucial. So Mary, the truth of it is that Mary was hiding from me for at least a year. I was never sure why. I didn't know her. And I also confess that I call myself an Eleanor Roosevelt liberal. So the Mary of it all from Meet the Press in the 90s was not a very appealing character to me. Nor were her politics what her politics are now. Everything's so deranged in the era of Trump. I can tell you she's not pro-Trump. But I didn't know her, and I was kind of afraid to meet her and thought maybe I wouldn't like her. But in any event, it didn't happen because she kept disappearing and not showing up for shoots. And I thought that would be a problem because I realized she really needed to be in this movie. So finally, we had a summit meeting, which was sort of like a date at Cafe Milano in Georgetown. I was a little bit nervous. I didn't really think it would work out. And we sat down and immediately locked in and had this ESP connection and adored each other from the minute we said hello, and ended up talking mostly about Gore Vidal, who was a pretty radical center-left guy. She'd read everything he'd ever written. I was Gore Vidal's literary executor and a friend of his. So I'm conversant in that. And I don't know, it came up and I think she'd read all but one book, which she then read subsequently. When I did the front porch interview with her, she had The Smithsonian Institution by Vidal next to her. She is really smart. And he is really smart. They are so both brilliant, I think. And they're both were the best in their class. And you can see why the marriage worked, because they're actually very similar, despite being on whatever you want to say, different sides. You had pointed out, we were talking, she has this line on the front porch interview where she says that that people only want to live in an echo chamber, right? And that she learns something from him every day. And then she says something like, he's a force of nature, but so's a hurricane.
Yeah, I called Morgan into the room to hear that. I'm like, see, you're not the only person who has to deal with this. Batten down the hatches, make a stiff drink.
Martini, specifically a martini.
Yeah, they're so funny with their lifestyle and how they live and how he is with his little 3-ounce bottles and his gummies and his hallway running. And, the way you bring in these little personality traits is just makes the film so winning. And, the editing style and the score are also really a part of that. It could be a film where you watch this guy on the phone, and he's on the phone all the time, but it has this staccato pace and this really layered pace. Is that something you discovered in the editing process? And tell us about the score. You had a bit of an epiphany.
Well, yeah. I mean, the fun thing is these come few and far between, but I was having problems with the hotel hall running, the epic kind of Hyatt Regency one in the John Portman lobby. And he, was like, let me back up for a second. I didn't know about the hotel hall running, and I'm doing an interview with one of his friends, and he's saying, yes, well, James won't fly nonstop across country. He takes 2 legs and lands in a city that has a Hyatt Regency, gets off the plane, goes to the Hyatt Regency and runs, and then gets back. I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, you mean this is not real? And they said, oh, no, that he always takes 2 legs. And I was like, oh, we have to shoot that. So we did that. It was the last thing we shot, actually, except for the recut stuff. And we sneaked into a Hyatt Regency and sniped it. And I rented a room, and we did that. So we had like 3 cameras, and it worked out really well. But what to play there, it's sort of like a theme segment, which I never have in my films. But it was just, where were we going to put this? And it worked. So the composer of my love was kind of doing like a weird "Don't Stop Thinking About Tomorrow" cover there, and I was like, that's not good. And it kept getting worse. And then I was driving out to Palm Springs. I had like a Spotify opera station on, and suddenly it's like ba-dum bum bum ba-dum bum bum. I was like, wait a minute. So I called the editor from the car and I said, I have the weirdest idea, but why don't you try this? It's called the Habanera from Bizet's Carmen. And he was like, and then he's immediately worked. So that was just like one of these wonderful things that make you glad that you do this for a living, because it just clicked in. And the rest of the score, Lauren Balfe, who's I think wonderful. And he wasn't getting, this is the hardest one we ever did. And I just kept on telling him, just keep composing against the grain mostly. So there's a cello piece in there that's really their marriage theme. And it sounds like, it's almost like something from a crime film or a procedural. It works really well. So that was that. But I'll just say one thing about the stylistic and the staccato, or the editing is, the verite is wrapped in backstory, and we go back and forth and don't do things linearly, which is my obsession, never to tell a linear story. But the verite of it all, which I live for, he's obviously a great character. He's eccentric and all that sort of built in. But I love the rough and readiness of him. So the whole life on the phone, and then having the iPhone names come on and not having to have lower thirds to identify the people, and then using Zoom really appealed to me here, and not having everything be pretty, perfect. His life's on the phone and on Zoom in large part, and on airplanes, and not very nice airplanes, it turns out. And just like that for me was great. And I wanted his spilling his pills and things like that. I just didn't want to have perfection here. I wanted to have the rough-hewn James be part of the kind of expression of the style of the film.
Well, as he says, in the first Zoom you show, he's like, if you want to see why an 80-year-old shouldn't be in office, look at the Zoom. Look at how
program will show you. Yeah. That is just one of those things where, we're just shooting verite and he goes to do his podcast, and that gift where he doesn't know how to use the headphones and Al Hunt can't use the Zoom or the podcast thing. And I mean, just like, that's why verite is the best. I mean, you just find the stuff. And then we got the podcast feeds, and Al is, with his papers and the surreal shot, which is, I didn't shoot that. Al's that way. But for me, that's the beauty of documentary. That's why it's the best. I mean,
it's everything in between, everything underneath what you usually see. Well, speaking of verite, I mean, you're using excerpts from the great film, The War Room. And just tell me about that time and that era and how you were able to distill it down. I mean, don't shy away, turn into the fire, that kind of advice. I mean, that's when I say the film is about so much. I feel like it's about how to live, it's about how to handle yourself. And it emboldens the audience. I feel like, at least for me, like with cancel culture and all of that, just seeing him and the way he so boldly expresses his feelings about wokeness and what is that? The liberals change, left America is working on changing the dictionary.
Yeah, it's become more about changing dictionaries than changing lives, which I think there are a couple Bartlett's quotation level lines in this. That's a quiet one that I like. The other one is, of course, I discovered air conditioning and masturbation about the same time in my life. Boy, what a wild combo. I told him, James, that's Bartlett's level. I mean, forget it's the economy, stupid. That's your line.
But yeah, showing him coming out of like a leper colony, sort of leper hospital upbringing to like, it was like, oh no, this is going to be that part where it's like about this one stop sign, and it's this part where you go back into his past. But it really added up to a person who was willing to take on the fight.
I think that I don't love the first thing you ever think about when you're doing something that has a person at the center of it is like, why don't we go back to where you came from? And then if you're me, you think, no, please, let's not do that. And then he suggested it, and he was really interested in doing it. And I didn't think it was a bad idea, but I thought, I don't know, I don't love that type of thing. The one stop sign thing is the normal part of it. There's a lot of richness in there. And then I had a revelation on that shoot. I should say, as a footnote, a behind the scenes thing, like the gear van, the equipment van got stuck in the mud because it's like on a levee. It was James's favorite day of the shoot, and he was so sweet. He made the guy driving it feel great. And then he engineered getting the van out of the mud. It was wonderful. We shot it. We couldn't put it in, but that's so James, I thought. And he said, like, if you don't get stuck in the mud in Southern Louisiana, you haven't been in Southern Louisiana. But then we go to the what was called the National Leprosarium. So here you have this town with two elements to it. It's a overwhelmingly black population. It has what was one of two national leprosariums, and the other one's in Hawaii. They're run by the Marines at the time. But I said to him, and he hadn't, I don't think, intellectualized this, but I said, I've had a revelation about you here. You come from a place of the marginalized. So you have a feel for that innately from birth. And then you decided to use politics to lift people up. I really see that in your whole arc here. And he hadn't quite, I don't think, formulated it that way. And we never really talked about it again, but I began to build that into the film. And I do believe it. I don't think that is an imposed arc on his life. And I do think that the thrust of his message here, which is that if you don't win, you ain't going to get your shit done, as he puts it, is correct. And that is the way that he is trying to affect change. And then getting to, I think, the main kind of thrust of the film, which was thrust upon me, was his inserting himself in a consequential, maybe the most consequential, they always say that, but I feel it, presidential election of our time, and seeing something that no one really was willing to say, even if they saw it in May of 2023, which is that Biden is probably going to lose, and then the debate happening, which was the arcing of my filming process. I thought Biden would bring State of the Union Biden to that debate, and I thought that I thought this would be a kind of a coin toss election of two people that were more of the same. But obviously things landed differently. But James really did have a role in that. And I felt, it's very hard to get lightning in a bottle, and we luckily did. So that's why we're here today with a finished film. And the film mercifully comes out in a few weeks. And I'm thrilled about that.
So back to him wishing the humanities department at Amherst to shut the book up.
Another Bartlett
and other
line,
things
right.
that he says. Yeah. Where does this come from? Did you film him sort of coming up with these, and like you moved down to New Orleans basically for a while and just kind of watched him formulate all of these arguments, or I guess they're not even arguments. He's like, don't argue, just win. But these statements.
Oh no, he comes up.
Out?
Well, there's always a process part for me. I love process. So then we did go down there. We didn't spend too many days. We kept going back. I felt like that was the right cadence. And then you hang out and you get to know the people, and it was going well with Mary at that time. But I saw that, as Stephanopoulos says, James writes by talking on the phone. And that is essential. So this phone call chain has been going on since the War Room. Same people, really. Most of them are sitting and giving testimony in the film. But his art form, I don't think he's held a pen in 50 years, probably. It's all oral and in his head. But he repeatedly talks on the phone and then refines what he's going to say that day. And unlike most people on earth, he gets called by TV stations multiple times a day and podcasts. And he has a platform. And he very carefully considers what he's going to do to move the needle. I can't think of a lot of other kind of guns for hire, or whatever he is now, sort of like I think he's unique, to be honest with you. But he's an elder statesman with a platform who has a political agenda. And that used to be Bob Strauss and Vernon Jordan and Clark Clifford and these sort of like, priest-like figures that were lawyers in Washington. And that's not James, but he's it. And how do you do that? How does he do that day in and day out? That's how he does it. And it's good. You can see it's just great. It's not. And we just captured that. So it's like these, you can't unsee these poll numbers. It's like walking in on your grandmother naked. He was trying that on everyone. He tried it on me, tried it on the waiter, he tried it out all day. We couldn't get that one in. I wanted that one, but we couldn't get that one in. But that's what it's like. And it's wonderful. It's like being with a great comedian who tries out material. But he's a professional communicator of the highest caliber. And as Bagala says, he's the smartest son of a bitch who ever did this for a living. So what you have as another element of the film is that person. And then we got Bill Clinton, and you see the other greatest of that period. Well, huckster, salesman, president, storyteller, communicator, rogue. There's a parallelism there. They work together. They found each other. They're from similar backgrounds. All that story, middle. But then for me, I thought Clinton actually did bring something to this. He didn't do what I call the bar mitzvah video interview. And as we were cutting, I thought, this is kind of historic. I don't think he's ever talked about the War Room and James and what went on there. And that period. So you have the man himself kind of commenting on the consultant. It's really supposed to be the other way around, by the way, not really how it works. presidents don't normally talk about political consultants, but James has risen obviously to this level of near immortality that commanded it, and you see Clinton doing his thing, which I thought was fun.
Well, it's an incredible story, and I don't know if I've ever heard it before about Stephanopoulos, like falling into the corner into a
fetal position. I did love that. I mean, here you have this is kind of historic stuff. You have a president of the United States, former president, saying Georgie's in the fetal position, and James is stomping around the room. I mean, that's
and he's saying this is a win. This is a way we can
turn into the fire. I mean, for me, this is kind of like, not only is it Clinton doing a retrospective masterclass, but you're getting like color commentary on what was happening during the war room from Bill Clinton, who's only in the war room in news footage. So now you're getting a bit of a kind of Criterion Collection, DVD extra here.
Is that your favorite moment? It's funny. We as filmmakers usually have a couple moments that we just kind of love. What are your favorite moments?
Oh gosh.
Not just for the sake of the quality, but also what you were experiencing of it.
For me, it's when he puts the headphones on and he, comes up with that line, which sums up the Biden dilemma months before really it came into focus. I just thought, has anyone read James Thurber here? No one reads James Thurber anymore. James Thurber had a horror of technology, and he, in his cartoons and his writing, he writes about his relatives his family was afraid that the electricity would come out of the outlets and kill them all. And that reminded me of that for some reason, where he's kind of like so afraid of these wires and headphones because he's a Luddite, but he, is doing his thing. I just, that gets me every time. But I think someone that can come up with, I discovered air conditioning and masturbation. I mean, that was pretty good.
Yeah, that's really good. I want to open it up. Yeah, right there.
Sort of a two-part question. Is she a preachy female? I can't answer that. I think the preachy female thing needs to sort of stand on its own, and I think he explains what he's trying to do. He does say at the end during the credits, I can circle back to the first part of your question. We found that we were really rushing at the end here to figure this out and get a kind of button of the Harris era that he had helped bring about. And he says on that podcast, I think, I'm from New Orleans. When I see a parade, I get a baton, a whistle, and a hi-hat, and I throw the baton in the air. She can do whatever she wants. That's the Kamala Harris parade, eat her dust. I think that says a lot about what he thinks about Harris. I think he's thrilled, and I think he's impressed. And if you want to know what he thinks, text me several times a day. I mean, it's I'd rather be her than him, is what he says today. Now, we were still shooting, but I was not traveling a lot. We would Zoom it. So when he's dejected after the debate and he's prone in bed, his Zooming style always, even when he was on the Brian Williams show, I love that the camera was always in like the worst place during the Zooms. For me, I was like, that has to be in the movie. So there he is lying down, and he has this moment of dejection where he says, I tried, man, I tried. And then things flipped, and we were shooting, but we were doing it on the fly, and it was scary, but we got it in. So they have money. They're all over the lot. Mary collects houses. They were in Telluride, and she's on Zillow shopping for ranches in Telluride. That was part of it. She has it's the farm in Virginia is kind of her thing. He's there. They lived in Alexandria, Virginia, I think, in a townhouse. Then they had I think she at one point had 2 townhouses in Georgetown. People make fun of her for having too much real estate. They had a grand house in New Orleans off of St. Charles that was really spectacular. And it was they made great use of it. They did all of the Katrina aftermath stuff and the BP oil spill activism that they did, which doesn't really make it in the film. And, embarrassment of riches. He lives mostly in New Orleans, and he goes around with Harry the dog, and he eats at Herb Saint every day and has the same thing, and then does hotel hall running or Audubon Park running and fist bumps people. That's what it's like. Have a few days. Yeah. I mean, I think I assume if we're all here, we all have some, experience and insight into this. I didn't think this was a studio film or a streamer film when it kind of came about. So something told me this is an 80-year-old white guy, which were two things that I didn't think were going to like sell in the room. I think people would have said, oh, he's yesterday. I've confronted that a lot with my subjects. I'm a geronophile. I love an old person. So you get a lot of that, which is like, oh, they're old and they're yesterday and we need, whatever. The Kardashianification of our lives. So I just said we're going to do private equity, and we made a lot of phone calls, and I mean, there are no shortage of high net worth individuals in the kind of orbit of high-end democratic politics. And we raised it. And it didn't come particularly easy. It was okay-ish. I just thought it was worth doing. I was confident, and we got some big chunks, and it was one of those journeys. But it wasn't like the desperate scraping thing, which I've done too. And I think these are the best films usually, to be honest with you. I mean, if you haven't maxed out low interest credit cards when you're making a film, you haven't lived.
And it was from what? Spring of 2023? When did you?
Before that. I think we were going for a little bit before that. Yeah. We didn't have to max out. That was another film I'm thinking of, but it was,
say.
Yeah.
Yes. Any other questions? Yes.
Well, for this film, I mean, I've never had a bad editor relationship, I'm happy to say. For me, it's sacred in general. That collaboration, boy, I mean, that's just the joy of it. I mean, all the collaborations really I love. I started as a writer, the loneliest, just absolutely, I mean, my God, to be a filmmaker after being a writer is the joy of never having to be alone. Also, by the way, I mean, if writers of books and long form journalism had the help that film editors have and the organizational tools, I could write an article in 5 minutes. I mean, it's a wonderful system that has not redounded to the writing art yet for some reason. But anyway, Ryan Rothmeyer, he and I collaborated before. He cut a key episode of the Reagan's series, which was called Dog Whistle, which was about Reagan's commented upon propensity for dog whistle racism, which I thought was a blow that I wanted to strike for humanity. And he did a beautiful job on that. And that's why I chose him for this. We sat in the room and banged heads for a long time. And I mean, not adversarially. We just was like, this was a puzzle. I think the biggest problem was Mary in that where to put it. It's in sections. So she was too late. Mary was too late. That was the note. And then it was like, she's farther forward. It's like, she's still too late. And we got it, I think, eventually. But I mean, we had like middle Mary, we had end Mary, we had caboose Mary. And I think we finally got it right.
It's funny. There always are those challenges that you're just kind of like, what to do. And I think with this one, you have, I mean, I was saying to you over dinner, like, I mean, he's a dream subject. He is so dynamic in his kooky ways and just a font. And so is she. But getting into that dynamic is kind of like, they control that narrative and they've done it for years. And so it's an interesting thing. You feel very intimate. I mean, that porch interview feels very intimate.
Well, that was hard one. I mean, that was after our date at Cafe Milano. And
I could tell.
Gore Vidal got me there. And then I was a 6-hour interview without a tripod. I love that type of thing. The cameraman was dying. But, like the dogs and the cats and the giant iced tea and all these accoutrements, I love that stuff. Him making the French fries with the weird thing that doesn't cut them well. And I live for that stuff. But the thing is, it's just structure. It's all structure. And I thought this had to be an intricate structure. Then when she became part of the film, which I thought was necessary, then you have a two-hander. But it's not just a two-hander. It's got a lot of things had to happen in the film. So I think that that was the editing challenge. And it took, I take a while. The grand master that I've worked with is Bob Eisenhardt, who cut my first film. He's cut 3 films. I've cut 3 films with him. He's like the Yoda. I mean, my God, like you can't even imagine what happens. Like the cards on the wall, he can stand there and just like, that card needs to go here. And he's always right. I was like, I couldn't figure that out to save my life. But this was more interactive because Ryan's much younger and he doesn't have that, Yoda of the ages thing. But in a way, then it's more discourse. But the structure and the dealing with different permutations of storytelling, the two-hander, the backstory, the historical thing, the verite, the archive, which had to live and breathe a certain way, and then the side trips into Hadacol, which those are the things that normally just don't make it. Or those are the things you really want to make it, and you're just like, we can't. But I'm glad that for somehow we found it. What we don't have is the BP oil spill, where Barry and James were utterly heroic. I mean, he was slagging Obama on MSNBC every night, saying that you have to fix this. And that was a wonderful aspect of James and his bravery and his willing to tell the truth. And, that was an example of something that couldn't make it in a 90-minute. I'm a kind of 90-something film director generally too. So I didn't want to do 100+ minute movie.
The Iraq War made it in though. That was really intense because it just like you really brought us there with her going to work first in the White House, and that was already hard, and then that war.
Well, what I came to realize and had known but maybe forgotten or didn't ever realize was that, again, this public marriage that was about fame and celebrity, and that turned people off, by the way, at the time. And in my kind of like take someone out to dinner and ask them about the film I'm making type of focus group that I sometimes do. And a lot of people that remembered them from that period and followed their trajectory and were really kind of like interested in Mary as a character. Usually they were women, I found, and they would just start lecturing or like, I don't know if lecture's the word, but it was just emoting about, I hate them, that marriage, I hate her. It was a lot of really big pent up emotion that had stayed with people about them. So, and I think a lot of that had to do with maybe forgotten things about the Iraq War. They didn't like what they had her say. I mean, I do know mostly Democrats. I'm not quite in the silo that they criticize, but I live in West LA. But I felt I had to address that. And then the Iraq War, there were actually 2 things that were the matter for them in the Bush years. One was the Supreme Court decision that elevated W to the presidency. They didn't speak for many moons then, and then the Iraq War was the other. And I chose the Iraq War. And then after the Mary relationship kind of evolved between the two of us, and it's that psychiatric transference thing that can happen with camera and interviewer and interviewee, she starts going on about the marriage in that way and kind of braiding it with the difficulties about fights about a war where they both had voices. And I thought, whoa, this is not usual. And then she went there with the marriage and she said, going back to he slapped me, I would have been less surprised he'd slapped me across the face taking the Clinton job without telling her, which is kind of like talk about a motivating moment in a narrative. And then she brought it back later in the interview saying, he stood in the back of my investiture ceremony, crossed his arms, scowling, which was just bull. And, then she lands it and she says, I'm not recommending this for relationships. And I think that is the meta story here, because their relationship was a meta relationship by design and by success. And it really did get into people's heads. So here we are revisiting that. And it's a story of a marriage as well. But
it's real. I mean, like what is it? We don't have political civility. We have marriage civility. We have political chaos or partisan
bipartisan cacophony. Yeah. So that was such she's so smart and Brilliant. Articulate. We don't have bipartisan civility. We have bipartisan cacophony. We have marital civility. I thought it was really interesting. I've made 3-4 films about unconventional marriages, it turns out, and I didn't set out to make them at all, really. I mean, I could see that coming. I think I got the material enough. Scotty Bowers, who was by all accounts a gay hustler married to a woman, who didn't know that he was a gay hustler. And
Nancy and Ronald.
Ron and Nancy, well, they're the hustlers. And then my first film about Valentino and Giancarlo Giamatti, the designer, and who were a couple, but what really it was a story of a marriage as well. So I don't know if I'm attracted to that, but I love unconventional relationships. And I think that the strictures of marriage and the church and all that is kind of high bull. So I think it's interesting to explore that and let people see all that.
Well, Matt, on that note.
That's not a good note to end on, I'm afraid. I'm sorry.
One last question. We do have like 30 seconds if you have a quick one. Yes.
Oh, I don't think he says he hated anyone. I might not remember that, but she says he hated the war so much. I'll end on a kind of note that surprised me, which was we found this photo of Mary where she's the only woman in that lineup of guys. I was just like, oh, holy shit.
Yeah.
I mean, we forget, don't we? We forget. And then this is the anecdote I can end on. She said that in the Bush White Houses, women had to wear dresses or skirts. They couldn't wear pants, but she didn't care. She would sneak in before dawn in pants. But when she got called to see Cheney or Bush or H.W. Bush, she would throw on the same dress that hung on the back of her door, which was a polka dot dress. And Bush Sr., after a few months, said to her, "It's like, we have to start paying you people more. You can't afford more than this one dress." Thank you. This is so nice to show here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ondi.
Thanks for listening to another DGA Q&A. The Director's Cut is available wherever you listen to podcasts. And please share, subscribe, rate, and review. We'd love to hear your feedback, and you can help fellow film buffs find the show. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America.